listening to the Questionnaire.
Say that again.
You're listening to the Questionnaire.
I've just started.
Right here, for your ears, for your eyes.
The Questionnaire.
Get your Comic on.
Poke it out, poke it out, poke it out, poke it out.
Bad news? I told young me not to rush into battle. Wait. This is the Questionnaire. Ladies and gentlemen, the unknown factor. I think I kind of rush into everything. You know, I mean, to the point where we got, see, I should have checked the positioning of this before I started the show. It's a little low. So we'll move it to right there. You know what I mean? So it's better in perspective, right? Our co-host, he'll be joining us in a moment, and we'll just have it be a surprise. I mean, it'll be on the flyer, so technically you guys will know. But yeah, you know, because I should put it on the flyer. But this is season 2, you know, and we're getting into it. We've had some great guests, man. It's been a pleasure. Michael Oman actually dropped the day I filmed this, so you guys can figure out how long it takes me from getting them to where I do them to where they're out from that, even though you really can't because it varies per episode. But that's besides the point, right? What is the point? Is, man, we got somebody who is a bit of a savage when it comes to a lot of things. He really is. I mean, when you see him on screen, it tends to get brutal, I've noted, you know? But I want to ask him one question I meant to ask the first time he was on, right? So, Allan Henry, how you doing, man?
Hey, what up? Season 2, right on, man. It's good to be here.
I didn't flip your name wrong around that time, too, either, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get better about pronouncing people's names over here at the Questionnaire. We all know if you go back and look at season 1, it's pretty terrible. Yeah, we won't get into that at all, right? But I said we're trying to keep it kosher, but I gotta ask, man, I seen a little bit about the Cocaine Bear film, right? Where they had all the, like, you know, actors just sitting there doing a little panel as they do. They asked if, you know, the bear was actually doing anything. And they said no, but the guy playing him did an awful lot. What were you doing on set, Alan? Were you just trying to...
it's no, there was honestly, I think myself and the kids were like the only people who weren't on the gear for that film. A lot of people were. No, to be honest, I don't know. I chose not to pry into other people's lives, but I was too busy trying to figure out how I could crash through those branches wearing arm extensions and not fall off the side of a mountain. So that was a lot of what my process was like. I didn't have much time for extracurricular activities.
Yeah, and I don't know if those particular extracurricular activities would have helped you in those scenarios, because you definitely, with how that was done, were handling very enclosed spaces at point where, yeah, if you slipped a foot, or well, in an arm, as far as one of the front paws, really probably more than anything. Oh, I didn't think about that, Alan. Well, that's rough. So they just threw you under the bus then. Well, that was real nice of them.
No, there's a certain amount of anonymity, but mystery when you're actually making these films, because you can't predict everything. So a lot of the time you just have to be very flexible, very open, and very quick to adapt to whatever situation they might put you in. Yeah.
I can understand that, because I can relate based on the fact that, you know, sometimes Nick just pops in the house. Yeah. Marickovich.
Hey, guys.
It's Nick
Sorry
Marickovich.
for being late, man.
Huh?
Sorry for being tardy.
No, but it's Nick Marickovich in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah? Did you see that, Nick? I ain't butchering. I'm trying to do better in season 2 and not butchering names. What you do to your... Oh, that's just for that's just for your drawing for your hand. I thought you did something to yourself. For a minute, we've already kind of got into a couple of things. And you know how everybody was accusing Alan over here of partaking of what the bear did during that particular filming for that movie. Because, I don't know.
Get me in on that. I wanted to talk about that, too.
Yeah, they know the whole, like, half the cast threw him under the bus and said he was all partaken.
Alan, are you out in New Zealand right now? Is that where you're calling from?
I am
Right
in
on.
New Zealand. Yeah. Yep, in Wellington, New Zealand, the capital city.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
It's a
you know, Nick?
surprisingly sunny, warm day here. It's normally quite windy and gray, so this is really cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But don't you know, Nick? I very rarely talk to Americans.
He's a fan of Canadians.
I mean,
Oh yeah, aren't we all?
I mean, in all sincerity, if you look past through the episodes, it's I don't know how true or false that statement is, to be sincere, because I deal with it in abundance of people doing the show, but I love it. That's what's going on, man. We're just gonna get right back into it, right? Because I don't know. You got any questions on that particular film, Nick? Because I like we did you know Alan's been on the show before, Nick?
Yeah, I believe you and Scott both mentioned it,
Okay.
but yeah, I was brushing up on my cocaine bear before jumping on. But you did BFG as well, correct? And yeah, that was actually one of my daughter's favorite movies.
Oh, right
You know?
on. Yeah, I
Yeah.
loved that film. It's one of my favorite books. So it was really quite magical to work on it, and especially with such an amazing cast and amazing director as well. So.
Oh, no doubt. Was that like a bucket list moment for yourself?
It was. I didn't even realize it was until it was suddenly happening, and then so many things popped up, and I was like, you know what? When I was younger, there were things that I had always wanted to do when I decided to become an actor, and a number of those things I was able to do on the BFG. So it's awesome. And I mean, bucket list, or it'd be nice to do more of that again with those same people. That would be fantastic.
Well, Alan, on that, you said when you were younger, how did you originally envision a career as an actor relative to how it is for you now?
That's a good question. When I was a kid, I was very naive, and I was like, when you're famous, you have like fast cars and a helicopter, and a house that's got too many bedrooms and like a big swimming pool. So for me, it was what I saw, what I was sold when I was a kid was that hedonistic excess of like the 80s and the 90s that a lot of Hollywood was kind of perpetrating. And the reality is it's much different. I'm still a struggling artist, and I've chosen to remain in New Zealand because I love the country and I love the way that it's set up. And I tried to get involved in the Hollywood machine over in LA, and it was pretty hard. It was pretty tough. So I decided not to push through that. And yeah, so it's it's like it's a job and it's hard work, and everyone in New Zealand is working hard to make it a sustainable lifestyle, and we're getting there slowly. But thankfully, we still enjoy it, and we still enjoy working with each other. And the film community in New Zealand is pretty close. We're a tiny little island on the bottom of the planet anyway, so we have no choice but to be kind of in and out of each other's pockets when we're working. So you get to build a strong community, and that's what keeps us going and helps you find that support when you're meeting those challenges of trying to make this industry sustainable.
Right on.
I think that shares a lot with the comic book industry from the way you just explained it. But what I have to know from what you just said, you said you tried the Hollywood machine, right? And we just had Michael Oeming on the show just a couple past episodes ago. Great guy. And we got in specifically to the paperwork aspect of taking powers from a show, or I mean from a book into a show, right? So I'm curious on your end, when because you're not having to deal with rights of things, obviously, which I don't want to know how many pieces of paper that involves. I really don't. With Michael talking about 3 hours sometimes at the beginning of his days just signing crap, that it made my head hurt. I'm not even going to lie, All right. I'm just curious, like, what's the amount of paperwork you've seen when you initially did try and throw yourself into that Hollywood machine? How much of it was just NDAs and sign this and
In terms of things like NDAs or kind of interim contracts, it's I don't know if a system like LA, I don't think that exists anywhere else in the world, even in some of the bigger centers, even in other parts of America like New York and Atlanta. There's contracts, you've got contracts coming out the wazoo. They're everywhere. They're for everything. They do specific things because everyone is trying to be very clear with the contract. I think because of how binding the contract is, as opposed to something like New Zealand where contracts are important, but there's a lot of negotiation before a contract happens, which does indeed happen in LA. But New Zealand also has a strong culture of a verbal agreement or a gentleman's agreement, this idea of a common understanding that you reach before any contract is signed. And those are legally binding, not as much as contracts are, but still quite similar. And in New Zealand, a lot of the time, I think contracts are broadened to encompass many different aspects of what your job might be. And also, I can only speak as an international artist attempting to find work in North America. And the process for an international artist is very, very different. There are a lot of restrictions and limitations and caveats and sub-clauses and sub-clauses for every contract because of the nature of, I think, how the legal kind of system works. So yeah, I'm not surprised that Mike was talking about paperwork and how amazingly huge it is. When I signed on to do BFG way back in 2015, I got sent 6 contracts. One was for the film, and the other 5 were for the American payroll system. So there was one for like Social Security and one for rights and indemnities as an international artist, and another one for expectations of work as an artist and as an international artist. So it's quite wild for me, a New Zealander who, I have a stack of contracts from my work with Weta FX, which I've been doing since 2010. And I'm a day player, I'm a contractor, so I get a new contract for every day that I've worked. So the stack of contracts is ridiculous. Thankfully, they're all digital now, but it's one contract for your day's work, and the contract tries to cover everything that could feasibly be part of your job, which can be quite fuzzy around the edges. So negotiation comes into it a lot in New Zealand in terms of, we're a very collaborative nation most of the time. So people we're also not unionized here. So the idea that a union man has their job, and they have their one job that they do, and they turn up and they do that job and they get paid for that job, and no one else can do that job because it's job security. We don't have that in New Zealand. We don't have unions. So we have a more malleable system of like everybody chips in and we all help wherever help might be needed. And sometimes there are boundaries you can't cross. But often you'll find New Zealanders just asking, where can I help? Do you need me to pick up that thing or carry that thing or put that thing there? And it kind of grows from there. That was a really long answer for that question. I apologize.
No, you're fine, man. I think it was a fantastic answer. I mean, because it's interesting to hear the both sides of it, especially the fact Nick, is it just me, or is there a lot in what he said in the New Zealand community as far as in making films that just it reminds me of a lot that I've seen in the comic book community?
Oh, very much so. At least where I am in Toronto, but I've been to New York, I've been to San Diego, and it's the same group of creators that you're seeing. And Toronto's wonderful because it's a really tight community. If you're doing it, you probably know everyone else. And, people, if you ingratiate yourself with everyone else, people do help you out. And likewise, quid pro quo, you like to help them out, and definitely here. I mean, I've met great people in New York as well. Comics is like one of those things that if you're still doing it today after like 20 years, you gotta love everyone else because it's one of those business that's far from what it used to be in its heyday. So if you're still doing it, you're doing it like out of a, you just love making comics. And even though people who don't know about it look at it as this, this IP pool that Hollywood likes to grab from. Comic book sales are certainly not what they used to be. And the books were selling in the hundreds of thousands 20 years ago, and now like a title that sells 10 grand is considered a success.
Right.
And we're gonna definitely, by the way, be getting way more into that on the PanCon that'll be dropping right after this particular episode. That we'll have Allan in that mix, as well as your partner in crime in Dead Romans, Nick, Fred Kennedy, right? The Fearless One, as well as Hannibal Tadboo and Scott Woshak, which you both know. And wait, did I count that right? Allan, Fred. Look, man, I try to I'm playing like 4 PanCons at once. Leave me alone, guys. All right, I'm just yeah, and then one that at this particular moment I'm not sure who it's gonna be. It's a surprise to even me, So we'll definitely get way more into that as far as the fact that I particularly don't understand why the films, because like you say, Nick, a lot of people just look at comics and they're like, oh, it's IPs for Hollywood to grab up. Like why they don't drive the comic book sales, why people don't realize, because I can think of instances like, look, Game of Thrones became a huge series. The book sales went up, right? I mean, not the book was, the book was huge in the first place, but more people bought that book because of the Game of Thrones series. But look, I'm pretty sure when Captain America Civil War came out, I don't think there was a big jump in people going to grab the Civil War graphic novel. I might be wrong.
No, I don't think so. I find that highly dubious, right?
Allan, you're in that side of the industry. Fix it.
Man, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I've been just sitting back relaxing for too long. I really should. Let me just give him a call. Hi, Kathleen. Yeah, okay, we're screwing it up. Let's fix it.
Yeah, you tell him, look,
she wouldn't listen to me if I called her. Jeez.
I'm telling him, look, you got the new Godzilla X Kong, a new Empire coming out, which you got in, man. So like, look at that. Why does that not make people realize how many different things there are in regards to those characters? Like, because there's some great Godzilla comics, there's some great King Kong comics. They just did Godzilla versus Kong versus the Justice League, which still blows my mind a little.
Yeah, that's such a cool little crossover. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. Why don't people, if it comes down to, if I had to make a very, very uneducated guess, if it comes down to the priorities that people are being forced to make in regards to their disposable income and their recreation, I think there's so much pressure and stress being placed on everybody that those priorities are obviously being manipulated, and you can see it through social media. It's pretty obvious how how influencers are being used to perpetuate specific products, just like product placement in films, just like corporate sponsorship for athletes. Like there's I when I was traveling back to my kind of home region where I grew up here in New Zealand, I stopped in at an art exhibition, and found a couple of pieces of artwork from local artists that I really enjoyed. But I don't often go and buy art from local artists because, I'm an actor in New Zealand, and we're all struggling, however successful our giant monster films may be. So I would hazard a guess that there's a lot of, like, just, human beings and their disposable incomes is a pretty big risk for everyone. But don't quote me on that. I'm not
No,
like an
no, no,
economist. I'm not an
because
analyst. I'm not a psychologist. I'm
it's
making
funny.
a dumb guess because I'm poor.
No, I mean it's definitely something that we brought up within season 1 on I don't know how many episodes. I don't know if you were any of the episodes, Nick, where that was part of the conversation.
I don't know if I was, but
Okay.
that's certainly something, especially in the comics community. There's such a wide range, there's such a huge range between what your income is as a quote unquote successful, like higher end artist versus someone starting out, or even mid range. Like even myself. I'm lucky enough to have a partner who also works, so we live fairly comfortably. But if I'm being honest, like I'm doing quite well right now. But am I doing quite well to raise 2 children on my own? Probably not. That would be very tight pockets. I'm doing decent for a single guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing when you throw kids into the equation. I think it does make it more difficult, and I also think the fact that for some reason the comic book market isn't because look, when you're talking the sales that you were, Nick, as far as 100,000 copies, there were a lot of teenagers getting comics.
Oh yeah.
And I know the numbers for kids that age getting comics is not what it was. So I think, and man, everybody can be mad at me for what I'm about to say. And I don't mean you guys. I don't think you guys would be mad, but I'm sure I could make a lot of people mad with this statement. I think it's the fact that we've turned to entertaining our children with electronic devices. So they want to go and find something that's entertaining, especially if it's slightly longer form, than like a minute and a half TikTok or shorter. I think you find that more difficult, because
there's absolutely truth to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know with my son, for example, getting him to read a novel is like pulling teeth, but I have gotten him into graphic novels, and that was like not even just because it's my medium that I work in, but it was kind of out of desperation. Like I just wanted him to read something. But graphic novels are great in between, for that, because you can be immersed by the visuals, but at a more, shall we say, nuanced pace than social media or YouTube.
So let me pick on you again, Alan. Alan, tell him again. I'm just kidding, dude. I know you can't. I think if I had Kevin Feige here, I don't even think rightly he could do what I'm talking about. If I had Kevin Feige here right now and we were talking and I was like, look, you need to make them put the graphic novels for the movie in the movie theater when they're doing the next Marvel film, he'd probably be like, dude, I can't do that. I'd be like, well, then I've reached the top, and he told me he can't do it. And I guess at that point I go, well, I guess I have to find the head of AMC at that point. Really, would be the only, because I think that's honestly the only way you would be able to pull it off. You know what I mean? Is to push it that way, right?
You know what though? Like, I don't even know if you can completely blame just social media culture, because if you look in Japan, manga sales are still as strong as they've ever been. Relative to the North American market. And yet, the Japanese, they're not exactly shy about their social media. So, why with them, what's the cultural difference with them that manga is still a great medium, a popular medium for teens, for young people to use?
Nick, I was trying to, but I was trying to go back to something, but I'm going to do it in just a second, Alan, I swear. But based on what you said, I have to point out that I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that in Japan, there's a ton of manga. It's highly publicized. It starts at number 1. It's this concise series. You can go grab it. They also have Shogun with Shogun Magazine, which comes out weekly, I believe, and it has several parts of an issue. England does this as well with 10,000 AD, right? But if you look at the American market, it's mostly Marvel and DC. And if you want to just walk into a comic book store and you want to pick up, that character you've seen in film in that regard, you better be able to find a guy that really knows what they're talking about in comics to be able to point you to the graphic novel that you need to start on, as opposed to just you going and trying to walk through the new releases in the store and probably making your brain hurt. Either that or going for something that just picks up your eye that's frankly probably not Marvel or DC. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of the smaller stories, I think Deadly Class is something you could start, or Dead Romans is something. I bring up Deadly Class because it was a TV show, Nick.
Yeah.
But
Wes is a buddy of mine, actually.
Oh yeah, dude, great dude.
Wes Craig, yeah.
But I think that's something you could point somebody to, but it doesn't have the publication that or the push on it that Marvel and DC do, because it doesn't have Warner Brothers or Disney under it. Where if you look at Japan, mangas become animes, they're everywhere, they're more readily available. And like I said, it's easier to just grab number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. So I think it has a lot to do with that and how that market plays. And the comic book market via the big two has, to a certain degree, and I don't think they did it intentionally, I think they did it trying to keep the fan base that they had, but they've alienated certain people. Like I grabbed a Venom book that apparently takes place right after King in Black. And I used to, like, Spider-Man's what got me started in comics, but I grabbed this Venom book and I couldn't finish the whole graphic novel. I was like, this is so convoluted. I feel like I need to read 20 other graphic novels to understand what's going on right here. And I'm good. I'm going to go and totally pick up something else and read it, because that's just the way it is. And I think I'm curious. That's such a good segue you gave me, Nick, and it wasn't intentional. I love you, bro. Right. So I'm curious then, Alan, with you got Godzilla X Kong: A New Empire coming up. Is there anything is there anything like that with that film series that you see to where it's like, oh, if you didn't see the prior films, this is you're gonna miss so much? Or do they make it to where they pepper it into a point to where, you know what I mean? Because that's a fine line. I understand wanting to appease your fan base that's watched the previous films, but you don't want to alienate people that are trying to go in and see something new.
I think it's always a fine line between just dropping your audience in media res and just assuming that they've seen the previous versions, versus overloading the first third with so much exposition and backstory that you just give up a third of the story. I'm not sure how they're going to deal with that. There's it is a direct continuation from Godzilla vs. Kong in terms of storylines have continued. There are recurring characters, there are recurring stories and recurring ideas that were hinted at in both the Monarch series and Godzilla vs. Kong. So, and also Adam Wingard hasn't ruled out a third film in terms of he said it as a joke in an interview, but part of me is like, were you joking, Adam? He was like, if you've done 2, you might as well do 3. And if he's giving himself the opportunity to have a whole nother third film to finalize and crystallize a lot of storylines, then the arc of those 3 films, where you pepper in the knowledge that people need to know, you may have more room with a trilogy, but that's a hard question to answer in terms of how they're going to manage that. And I also think that because of what we saw with the success of Godzilla -1 and the success of Godzilla vs. Kong and the hype for Godzilla X Kong, is that I think Western audiences are starting to come around to the idea that their favorite character can have a spectrum of representations within media. as opposed to being so caught up on the one true representation of what that character is. And again, this is all conjecture from a very broad, blasé nerd like myself.
I love
But
it.
I think yeah, I think everyone's coming around to the idea that that two things can be true, or more than one thing can be true, especially when it comes to your favorite character from your favorite piece of art. I think if you want to hold true to what you think is a core idea and what is canonical, you should be allowed to, but by the very nature of art itself, and I may be just waffling, like art is subjective and art is broad. So, you know, fanfics exist, like fan art exists, where people take their favorite character and go, I would like to see an exploration in something different, or a different situation, or a different medium, or a different context. And that's still valid as a form of art and a form of enjoyment. So who knows how people are gonna react to it, man. I hope everyone goes and looks at all the other previous versions, and not just Godzilla vs. Kong, but like Kong Skull Island was great. Peter Jackson's King Kong was awesome. Those early Kongs and Son of Kongs just are so brilliant to watch, because from a modern perspective, they're absolutely ridiculous, because the technology was so limited that they were forced to be super creative when they tried to make this, to try to tell the story. But they also had to really convince the audience to suspend a lot of disbelief and engage a lot more imagination to really fulfill that story. And as technology goes on, we can always often look back and be like, oh, you know, the technology wasn't as great and the storytelling isn't as great. And you're like, well, yeah, but storytelling is a two-part. It's the storyteller and the listener. So those two have to work together to actually create the story.
Allan, let me ask you a question. Just because you brought up some of these classics, you know, that predated the digital technology that you're using today. Given your experience in, you know, motion referencing, when you look back, like, what stands out in your opinion as like great performances? You know, imagine you didn't have the digital capture that you're using these days. Like, when you look back at some classic films that predate that, what is it in your opinion, like, wow, that was like, what would you use as inspiration? Like, off the top of my head, first thing that comes to me is what was he called, like Moonchild from 2001, the ape, during the opening scene. Like, I remember seeing that, thinking like, wow, like, that's a pretty good job that they did. Like, they seem so lifelike. Like, clearly, you know, intellectually that there's a person in those suits, but you know, the performances were wild.
But and I think what you're hinting at there is that through your suspension of disbelief, there is enough of a performance there that you buy it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can, like, for me, it comes down to, when I look at I think because I've had the experience of working both in the digital filmmaking realm as well as physical. I've done some creature work. We did a lot of creature work for the Hobbit trilogy. And early in my career, I was working with some incredible physical creature suit performers here in New Zealand. Gentlemen like Benjamin Francham and Jed Brophy and Shane Runge. And Shane Runge is like this, you know, 7 foot tall, broad-shouldered Maori guy, and he's muscular and he's strong, and he was the Minotaur in all the Narnia films, and he was in that suit with the head, working through to get that performance through all of those levels of latex and fur and plastic and acrylic. And those performers, their ability to understand how character works through a physical barrier really comes across on the screen. And then you look at like some of the greats, like Doug Jones is phenomenal in the work that he does in a suit. Terry Notary is incredible in the work that he does. And last year I was at the Northern National Collectors Convention down in Windsor, and there were some of the original actors from the Japanese early shows. So the original Ultraman was there, Bin Furuya, and Furuya-san is like, when he's, you know, he's a very distinguished gentleman. He always wore a snappy suit, and he was very friendly and generous and open. And as soon as you asked him to be Ultraman, he was right there. So he understood what the performance was, even though he wasn't in the Ultraman suit. And I got to meet Sonoi Nakajima, and her father, Haruo Nakajima, was one of the original suit actors for that. I think it was the first era of those Godzilla Kong films, which I think was it Heisei? It wasn't Showa, it was Heisei, I think. But there are pictures of him in the Kong suit, in the Godzilla suit. And I watched those when I was a kid. And because I didn't know any better, I didn't know that digital technology was on the way, I just went, obviously that's a man in a suit, but this is a movie about a giant atomic lizard destroying a city. So I'm going to buy in, and what this person is doing with the stomping and the moving, it was fine. As a kid, I loved it. And I can go back and intellectualize it now in hindsight and be like, oh yeah, the limitations of the suit meant that there was only certain things you could do. Mm-hmm. But my experience as a viewer is what colors my appreciation of it.
All right, can I say
there's a? Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you're good, Nick. Like when you were on first, Alan, I said, were you wearing a monkey suit? Because I wanted to wear, like, I would have, and I think you misconstrued. Like, I personally, if I was playing Kong, man, I would want to, because I'm a fan of those old films. There's just a part of me that would want to be like, no, I must wear the suit. Why? Tradition. Shut up.
Well, I was just going to ask: is there any difference to Alan on your end in immersing yourself in the role when you're wearing a suit versus when you're not? But you have to act like said character, said bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are differences. Ultimately, it all comes down to the performance. Either way, I'm trying to give the performance what it deserves in terms of honoring the character. But digital versus physical suit wearing, the physical suit has it's a physical suit, so you're dealing with the challenge of the weight, the challenge of the accessibility of the suit, the limitations of the way it's been made. So working in a physical suit requires a lot of strength and endurance, because you're going to be, as soon as you start putting the suit on, you immediately start sweating, because it's such a workout to put the suit on. And then once you're in the suit, like, the suit is, depending on what it's made of, if it's made of foam, latex, and silicone and acrylic, that's not going to let heat travel at all. So you're just going to be cooking inside this thing. So the endurance is not only physical endurance, but you really have to have your mind in a place that can deal with this long period of being uncomfortable, so that you can still do the creative job you need to do, whilst keeping yourself safe and keeping the people around you safe, so that you can tell the story. Digitally, there's a lot more imagination involved, so you still need endurance, because they're going to be asking you to do more, especially if it's digital. They're like, well, you're not wearing the big heavy suit, so run faster and fall from a higher thing, and we'll put mats out, and you can get hit by this guy a few more times, right? Because you'll just land on the mats. So there are fluctuations in it, but it all comes down a lot of the time to discipline and endurance and being fit mentally and physically to do the job. Sorry, Jay, you were saying?
Oh no, well, because when I initially started performing on the stage musically, I at one point wore a cloth mask, which was just a painted mask. It was really tight on my face, and after one particular performance, I went outside. I took this mask off. I so wish someone would have took a picture of this moment, because I didn't get to see it, but everyone looked at me and was like, dude, your head's smoking. It looks like it's about to burst into flames, right? Because I apparently just heated my head up so much on stage, and I went outside. It was like You know, it was I think it was in the middle of winter actually. This has been a while ago. And like literally my head starts. Have you ever had a moment like that where you've been working in a
It was
suit?
like literally steaming.
Oh yeah,
I mean, like
Yeah.
I said, I wish I had a picture, Nick. But yeah, I was told my head was just like there was just steam rising off of it because
oh
of
yeah, oh
how.
yeah. It's
Do you have any
most of
cool
your.
pictures from that? I mean, come on, man. Don't you want a picture where you look like you're about to go Ghost Rider for real, Alan?
No, I didn't. I didn't have any pictures of it, but
Ah,
you lose most of your heat through the top of your head, and there have been days where every single one of us has like taken the head off or whatever, and everything is just evaporating. You look like you're about to burst into flame. Feels like you're about to burst into flame. But honestly, Jay, like if you get a gig on a Kong film and you want to wear the suit, I say do it, man. Do it. Like if you want to do it, do it. And then when you don't want to do it, like don't do it.
yeah, that would be the thing. I would probably start doing it, and I would probably like, and then like 20 minutes in, I'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. I got to take like 3 minutes. Why? Because I'm taking this monkey suit off, dude. I am dying.
Yeah. Yeah. The one of my colleagues that I mentioned earlier, Shane Runge, he was at a Lord of the Rings convention because he has done a lot of work in Lord of the Rings and in the Hobbit franchises, both as a creature performer but also as an actor and a stunt performer. He's incredibly talented. And he was there with Jed Brophy, who again is like one of New Zealand's royalty of acting. He's done creature work in pretty much everything that Peter Jackson's done. He's a phenomenal performer, and they're both wonderful, generous humans as well. They were at a convention, and a fan asked them, like, what's it like working in those suits, you know, day after day for months, years on those Peter Jackson films? And I remember Shane said, okay, here's an easy way to find out. I want you to get up and I want you to run to the top of those stairs, three flights up, and run back down. And he's like, okay. And he ran up to the top of the stairs and then he ran back down. And he was like, cool, now what? And Shane turned around to him and said, no, I didn't say finish. Keep going. And they just made this dude run up and down as long as he could until the guy was like, I don't know if I can do any more. It was just a sweaty mess. And Shane was like, yeah, cool. Yeah, so that's the first hour. We've got another 7 hours of this. So it's like you really do have to be a certain kind of crazy to do the kind of job that we do.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, I know it's just from wearing a mask on stage sometimes that I did, like, and I probably honestly still would wear that mask had somebody not jacked it at a bar. And I've never taken the time to remake it because it was handmade. I think they just people said it was a really good gimmick for what I was doing, and I don't think people liked me having it. So yeah, it got just poof and went up in the air, which is slightly annoying. But from doing that and performing on stage, dude, I mean, I know there would be times where I'd be like, I was like, I got 5, or I got to get through this last verse, and I would rip that mask off my head in the middle of the stage because I know I needed to let my head air out, you know. So have you ever come across a moment like that where in doing that you're like, hold on, man, I need 5? Or do you just find a way where you have to push through it? Because I mean, you're obviously in a situation where you're look, when it was me on stage, hey, it was me on stage. You know what I mean? If something happens, it's on me and me alone. In your situation, if something happens, it could affect a good deal of people.
Yep, and that happens every time you work in a suit. For you've always got to be aware of your own safety. So when you're uncomfortable, you have to know realistically and honestly how much of that discomfort you can handle. And sometimes you can kind of push through, but there comes a point where your body goes, all right, we've hit the limit. Any more of this and like we're going to pass out, you know, things are going to shut down, and that's going to be bad for everyone. And so you have to be able to communicate with the people around you, especially on crew, when those moments are happening. I'm currently working on the Minecraft movie here in New Zealand, and there are a lot of digital characters in that, and there are suits that have been made to accommodate the proportion and the size, because obviously Minecraft is a very different world. And as a performer, when we were doing all the costume fittings, the people building and maintaining the costume were very clear. They said, this is how much it weighs, put it on, see how well it moves. And then they honestly said, how long do you think you could stand to be in this during a take? And I had to sit there and think about how many minutes I could handle, because this thing was pretty heavy. And most of my work is digital, so it's just for, the costume is just for lighting reference mostly, because they're going to replace it anyway. So you have to keep communicating. And when the moment comes when you're like, no, cut me out of this, ideally you want to get out before you get to that point. But there have been points on films like The Hobbit, and some other films like parts of Mortal Engines and things like that, where you end up in a situation where you've let it go on just one scene too long, or one take too many, and it's all go, and you're like fighting. There was one point in The Hobbit, we were in silicon suits, and it was hot, and there wasn't a lot of air in the studio, and there were many of us, and we just started dropping like flies, because we thought, yeah, we could probably do one more, and that turned into 3 more, and we were just, there's a moment where, I don't know if anyone else experienced this in the suits, but there was a moment where I was looking through the head, the goblin head that I was wearing, and just the outside of my vision just darkened until it was getting to like just a small point of light that I could see. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yes, this is me. I'm losing consciousness now. And I managed to grab hold of someone, because I just caught them out of the side of my eye, grab hold of someone and kind of pull them in close and let them know, like, hey, I'm passing out. We need to get these heads off so I can get some water and some air. And it still took a while to get the heads off, but then everything shifted from let's do another take to, okay, let's keep these performers safe. Everybody in, let's undo these heads, get them off, get a fan, get some air circulating through the suit so they can breathe. And then we got the heads off, and a number of us had to sit down for a long time. But in fairness, once that happened, then everyone realized the magnitude of what we were trying to do for that scene. So then protocols changed and systems changed, and we never had that situation again, because takes were shorter. We were given time to take the heads off, blah, 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 blah. All that safety stuff ramped up.
Mm-hmm.
That's man. It's honestly not surprising to a certain degree. And like I said, I know people that would perform, and there were latex masks and this and that. Never anything that heavy, because I know what you're referring to. And I had people be like, you should get something like that. And I was like, you're out of your freaking mind. No. Like, no, I'm not going to go. I'm sorry. Well, because if you have to, like, imagine having a mask like that, and then on top of that, you got to go, like, no? Because, you don't have to deal with a lot of voice acting when you're doing any of this, right?
Most of the time, no. Sometimes you do.
We're like, well, I would assume that you don't have to give that kind of, like, it's a different level in that. So you can at least preserve your oxygen and really be able to focus on your breathing when you're dealing with that mask. And I would assume in part that's helpful. I know that's something, even when I was wearing my mask, I had to work on. I had to actively practice my sets with that to know that I could get through it. And it was it's brutal, man. It's brutal. It's brutal. So I don't want to. So no, I've changed my mind, Alan. If I ever get a Kong role, if for some reason I ever get to mocap King Kong in any instance, I don't want the monkey suit. Now that I've really had this whole conversation, Nick, would you wear the monkey suit?
I'm not a suit wearing kind of guy. I don't even do Halloween costumes, man.
But if you were playing Kong or Godzilla,
come on,
come on, part of your brain would.
I appreciate it, but it's just
But it's fine, if you want to experience it, Nick, put on like a wetsuit, and then put on another wetsuit, and then put a plastic bag over your head. There you go. Then you'll be sweet.
Alan's
Hey, man.
trying to kill us,
Hey,
Nick.
sorry, I got to get into
No.
Cocaine Bear a little bit because I missed the Cocaine Bear talk. So Alan, like just because I thought this movie was hilarious, and so that script comes to you, like first impressions.
Honestly, the first impression was, this is a ridiculous title. And then within like the first few pages, when it gets to Andrew Thornton kicks a bunch of cocaine into the forest, I was like, okay, all right. So far, the story is matching the hype from the title, and then it goes to the bear and what happens with the hikers, and I was like, I'm in. This is absolutely bonkers. I'm in. This is great. This is absolutely fantastic. And then the more I read it, just the funnier it got, because it's so silly. Once I realized that the script was as silly as the title was, I could really enjoy that Sam Raimi level of 90s horror comedy that was prevalent in that film.
Right on.
You know, like I loved the Evil Dead series. It cracks me up how silly Bruce Campbell is, and how he just, all of that is in the world of the film. Like these ridiculous characters take the world so seriously, because of course they would. But the whole thing is stupid, and everyone in this film took it seriously. Like, yes, it's a bear and it's on cocaine. Like you got to take it seriously. So, you know, and when Ranger Liz is like dealing with not only the bear in the woods, but then also the delinquents in the ranger's office, like everyone is taking it seriously, and stupid, outrageous, abnormal things are happening. So we as an audience get to really enjoy that.
It's funny.
Was it a breath of fresh air after, you know?
Honestly, after like a million Marvel films, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. It was another reason why I signed on. When I read it and I was like, oh, finally, please.
You know, the saddest part.
Weird.
The saddest part about Cocaine Bear to me is there can never be a sequel, right? But I did
never say never, man. Like they said that about Sharknado. Look at that.
Oh well, yeah, there
True-
were the
true
kids.
enough.
I forgot they did kind of set it up for. Yeah, if you ain't seen Cocaine Bear, highly recommend, for real. But it's you made a observation about that film that I never really thought of until. But Alan, you're right. There's very much an Evil Dead campiness to it, like.
Yeah.
Very much.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And Elizabeth Banks was always real clear about that. She was like, I grew up watching the Sam Raimi stuff, and that's what I love, and that's what I'm trying to reference, and what I'm trying to pay homage to. And she really stuck to her guns, and it's great. It's really, it was so nice to work on. Every day was a good time, because it was either stupid or there was like, you know, Tarantino levels of fake blood. It was just great.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Nick, you got any more questions about this bear that apparently he was doing what the bear did, or at least that's what the cast said? Look, I'm just going by what the cast said.
So much of the cast were like, well, you know, Alan was on the gear, if you know what I mean. He was getting into the method, and I was, when they were doing some of those on-set interviews, I was either standing right next to them or just off camera going, no, why? Don't do that. And I was at a friend's gig. She's in a band, and they were playing at this bar, and I went to, you know, because she's really great. So I went to have a good time and have some drinks, and she was like, oh, my friend Alan is here. You may know him as the bear from Cocaine Bear. And people were like, oh, wow. And she was like, yeah, he's probably got a bunch of it right now. And like, people just didn't realize. Yeah, people just didn't realize that was a joke. So I had to get up to go to the bathroom, legitimately go to the bathroom. And the whole bar full of people were like, he's going to the bathroom. Should we? So it was just the weirdest thing. Just friends and colleagues throwing me under the bus. And man, I ain't got time to do that stuff. I can't afford it, for one. But
I mean, yeah, if you're questioning about whether you should buy that comic book, I'd hope you don't have a habit of that as well, because I don't think you can have that habit and be a real big geek and like reading comics and such. Because I just they don't, unless you have a lot of money, you know.
Oh, but even then, the less money you spend on mind-altering substances, the more money you have to spend on comic books and video games and cool movies and merch. Like, that's where you should be doing it.
Oh, since you said it, I do just have to say, hopefully very soon I will have a spot where you can get some questionnaire t-shirts, right? With a new logo that's not on this episode. We'll be starting that within season 3. And we'll just have to bring Alan back in season 3 too. Because I got
Well, all right.
you know,
Yeah, if I got to come back for season 3, okay.
well, hey, man, look, we're bringing you back now and then back to back, and with it, we're bringing a bunch of individuals that you know. I think it's hilarious because you and Nick hung out at Toronto Comic-Con, or at the Toronto Comic-Con, correct?
No, I've never met Nick.
No. We just met. I believe Scott met you there, right? Because
Yeah.
I ran into him there.
See, I'm intertwining then, so my bad. I thought you had also met Nick and Fred at that same con, but it's just the fact that Scott also met you and Fred and the web that is weaved over here at the questionnaire. If you connected everybody that knew everybody, could you do me a favor and show it to me so I knew? For anybody out there watching that does that, I'm just saying, man, because I can't keep track, right? I really, really can. But I do know what you all need to keep track of. You need to keep track of Alan, man. He's got a lot of stuff coming out. We didn't even get into the Planet of the Apes film that you got coming soon.
Yeah.
Oh,
Kingdom.
Planet of the Apes.
Kingdom. Yeah. We
did Kingdom.
We did some motion capture and performance capture for it in post production.
Right
so
on.
a number of my friends were involved in the principal photography. My good friend Sarah Wiseman, who is a phenomenal actress, she is one of the leads in that film, and she's incredible. She's absolutely amazing. So yeah, but yeah, I was just involved with the weather effects. Post-production performance capture.
Hey man,
still it was hours and hours of being an ape for sure.
Yeah. Without that, but apparently they just like to make Alan apes here recently. Like you went from playing in superhero films to being a bear that just had a serious problem with nose candy to now you just play apes, Alan. What's going on?
I think just as I get older and grumpier, I just resemble a bald, like an orangutan or something. I don't know.
All right. Well, with that in mind, I want you all to make sure you check out the Patreon. We'll have a PanCon with Fearless Fred, the other half of the creator of Dead Romans, with Nick as well as Scott. Hold on, let me see. So, yeah, let me see if I can get this right. Scott, Nick, Hannibal. Wait, why did I say your name in that, Nick?
Hannibal.
You're not going to be on that PanCon. Fred, Nick.
Fred's my alter ego, yeah.
All right. Fred, Scott, Hannibal, Alan, and one other person that's still to be determined. I don't know who it'd be, but we'll find out later. But what I want you all to do is check out the links in the description. You can find out more about Alan. You can find out a little bit more about Nick, right? Also, go check out that new Godzilla X Kong, A New Empire, getting ready to drop. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And I know you got Minecraft. I bet that's going to be season 3. We're going to dig into Minecraft because I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. But I know people got to go and things got to be done, and that's just the way that is. So I want you all to do 3 more things for me, right? First, always give it that thumbs up, right? Second, get your comic on. Third, have a good night, y'all.
We're listening to the questionnaire.
Say that again.
You're listening to the questionnaires.
I've just started.
Right here, for your ears, for your eyes.
The questionnaire.
Get your comic on.
Poke it out, poke it out, poke it out, poke it out.